Hey guys, this week's episode is my conversation with Mark Wylam from SportsProsConnect. If you have ever wondered or considered taking on a coaching job in another country, then this is the episode for you. We discuss pretty much everything about international positions, from keys to landing that international job to the organizational structure of clubs, compensation, and I even asked him which are the most profitable countries to coach in. Mark has a great story, and his platform for tennis coaches and clubs has gotten bigger and bigger in the last few years. I hope that you're enjoying the episodes so far. Remember to follow Vita Tennis on Facebook and Instagram, and you can email me at vitatennispodcast@gmail.com. Get ready to learn from one of the best out there, only here at Vita Tennis. Here's my conversation with Mark. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Vita Tennis, the podcast for those of us who eat, sleep, breathe tennis. I'm Jennifer Gelhaus, and today I am talking with Mark Wylam, who is the owner and founder of SportsProsConnect, a worldwide tennis coaching job platform that connects tennis coaches with academies, resorts, clubs, and federations. SportsProsConnect has placed over 350 tennis professionals with jobs all over the world. They also have tennis, paddlel, and fitness coaches registered from more than 100 countries around the globe. Mark has a degree in business management, he's certified by the PTR, and he actually coaches at the Letterkenny Tennis Club Academy in Ireland. Welcome, Mark, to Vita Tennis. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Jennifer. Really nice to be here.
Thank you. So, Mark, what is the story? Let's start with the story about SportsProsConnect. How did it get started? What inspired you to create this platform for coaches?
Okay, it's a good question. So the first thing is that, and I'll have to bring this into every conversation, we were originally called Social Tennis. That was a company that was originated by my late father. He had, I suppose, been a bit of an innovator. He'd written a book on tennis tournaments and that kind of thing. And he'd created a platform called Social Tennis. It was around in the early 2000s, and it was all about sort of coaches promoting themselves and really giving the opportunity for coaches to have a bit of a profile about them. Back in 2015, unfortunately, my father was given 6 months to live, and he first thing he said afterwards was, obviously, Mark, you're coaching, please take it and do with it what you want. So 6 months after, well, three months after that, he passed away. I thought about what to do with it for a few months, and obviously it was a tricky time. But after that, I decided to take it on full time. I was hating my full-time job, which was working in medical claims, and I just decided to take on the platform and make it my own, really.
Yeah. And were you coaching at that time as well, or no?
Yeah, I was doing a few hours here and there. I have to say, I've never been a full-time coach. I've always had hours here and there, but never necessarily a full-time coach. So yes, at the time I was playing a lot, I was coaching a lot, but not on a full-time basis.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen and kind of followed the growth of SportsProsConnect for the last few years, just, on LinkedIn and stuff. Just kind of seeing it and checking out the website every now and then. And it seems like every time I go in, it's bigger and better. So awesome. Where are most of your clubs located that you're working with?
So I guess I have contacts all over the world. A lot of people I've met through networking in the States, in New York. I've been 3 or 4 times. I've been in the States in the PTR conference at Hilton Head a couple of times. So I've been a fair bit around the States, but also, obviously, I'm based in Ireland myself. I'm originally from England. So a lot of what we're doing is European, Middle East, Asian, and Australasian based as well. So we would say that we're pretty global. Like you mentioned in the bio there just a few minutes ago, we have coaches, academies, players, all based in more than 100 countries. So we're fairly well known throughout the world at the moment.
And I know that you also have profiles for the coaches, kind of like you used to do, or your dad used to do, from what you were saying.
Yeah.
Is that it started there, and then it kind of naturally transitioned into helping these coaches further and helping them actually find positions.
Yeah, exactly. I started the business as social tennis, and part of what Dad did was create kind of the first online CV, if you like. When we developed into social tennis, we made that much more sort of multimedia and user friendly, and added pictures, videos. Whereas before it was all kind of just text. It was literally a CV or resume. So we moved into that when I rebranded. I rebranded from Social Tennis to SportsProsConnect in May 2018. Then we were, so this is almost it's 5 years this week actually. So we're going through an anniversary, which is fantastic. But basically it transitioned from sort of being helping tennis coaches to promote themselves a little bit to then helping academies. And then I moved into, and obviously what a lot of the thing happened was that obviously we had coaches registered, we had academies registered, and the academy started asking, can you provide us with coaches? And the coaches started asking, what about jobs? And there was a kind of a natural transition. So in November 2018, November 2019 now, we officially launched a jobs platform as part of the platform SportsProsConnect. So that's where it all sort of developed from.
Yeah, and I think that's how, or at least the time that I found out about it, was as a search platform for coaching jobs worldwide. Yeah. And would you say how different are the qualification requirements in different countries? Do different countries prioritize different things in the hiring process for the pros?
Most of the countries that are willing and able to accept international coaches are reasonably flexible. So there's so many different certifications you can get, from PTR, from USPTA to ITF to GBTCA to Tennis Australia to LTA. There's numerous different coaching certifications, and the general is to have an internationally recognized coaching qualification. Now, what we would call internationally is hard to say because every country is different. But and I do get asked this question a lot: what are the best certifications to do? What should I do here and there? And I can't really tell people. I'm not an expert in those. I know that I work with several, but I can't tell people because I haven't gone through them. I've only gone through PTR myself, so I can't really do that. But internationally recognized tends to be PTR. It tends to be ITF, GPTCA, which is another one, which is an ATP certification. So there is a few that they're using, but if you're certified by the French DGEP system, that's a great qualification, just like LTA and from England. And most places will accept something like that, something out of the ones that I've mentioned there.
Gotcha. And do most clubs that you work with bring in a coach from a different country, or do they mostly hire within their own country? How does that work?
So this is a difficult one because obviously we're not massively into the US because it's so difficult to bring in foreign coaches in the US. Likewise, we're not necessarily working so much in the UK because of, number one, Brexit, but also needing a visa and also the fact that LTA have their own specific qualification for UK coaches, and you tend to need the LTA certification. So it really does vary, but the countries that tend to ask for international coaches are the ones that we work with much closer. There does seem to be a need for coaches wherever you look, whichever country you're looking at. Germany is one. They're very much looking for coaches all around the world, and they're very open to hiring, ideally EU and ideally German speaking, but they're also open to go outside as that. Australia is another one because they've been affected quite a lot by COVID. So they've just opened their borders again and allowing, and there is a shortage of coaches definitely in Australia as well. Another big market of mine, Jennifer, is China. And China obviously has been probably the country most affected by COVID. And they just simply were not letting people in for 3 years, I think it was pretty much. But now it's just opened up again. It's now become a little bit easier because the Chinese really want to see international coaches. Very few Chinese want to be taught tennis by a Chinese coach, and it's just their culture. So now we're looking for, we're looking for so many different positions in China. That is probably the biggest market that's opened up for us recently.
Yeah, it's really interesting. What do you think, in your opinion, are the main reasons a club wants to hire internationally? Is it, like you said, in Australia, is it a shortage of coaches? Is it something about maybe English speaking or, having more experience, I guess? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a bit of everything. I think a lot of, for example, if we take Australia, I know when we first started the platform, the only people that they were able to take in were people on a holiday visa, which means that they're under 30. So it's not necessarily about experience, it's about the amount of coaches that they can bring in. Whereas now it's a little bit more that they are in desperate need of coaches, and they would consider coaches from everywhere, depending if they. Some companies will only accept the working visa holidays and the holiday visas, which allows them to work for a specific amount of time per year. And these are the young people that go across and under 30. And then if they like the coach, or if the coach does well in that time, then they will do a sponsored visa. So I think it's a mixture of everything, Jennifer. I think at the end of the day, there is a shortage of coaches. I think a lot have left the industry since COVID because there's no guarantee, and I think that places, and I think that also tennis is expanding, and everywhere you go, you see posts from a national federation saying tennis is on the up, which is fantastic for our game. But that means that you need more coaches, and unfortunately, just can't keep up with the trend.
So interesting. And you brought up visas, and I can't imagine how difficult it is to even start comprehending all the different requirements for different countries when it comes to work visas and things like that. Does the club usually handle that, or is that something that you provide help with finding a visa or helping people through the process of the visa?
It's the actual employer that does that. So we don't get involved in that side. We're the main connectors. We connect them, and then it's down to the employer to go through the visa. Now, sometimes it could be the applicant that does everything for the visa. Other times, and more likely, it's the recruiter because they've got a contract offer they can give the coach. So it's mainly the recruiters that have to know. And also another thing is that only certain recruiters of a certain size will find it easy to go through the visa process. So you'll have to get a big company really that will particularly sponsor you. Whereas if you're going on a holiday visa, it's kind of on your own, and you are able to get that visa yourself.
So you're saying that the cost comes up to the club when it's a sponsorship, but when it's the holiday visas, that's on the coach to pay for those. The cost.
Not necessarily that, but some of the recruiters will help to pay for them or pay for them. But when it's a sponsored visa, certainly it will be paid for by the club or the academy, and that's a big expense. But that's an expense that they're prepared to pay now. Whereas maybe during the COVID time when you couldn't get people in, they weren't obviously prepared to pay that, and it's just changed within times.
What do you think is the key to the success of a coach starting a new position in a different country?
I think that having the experience of being in other countries before that enables them to really stand out from the crowd. A lot of recruiters will expect an employee or a coach that they hire to have had experience in different cultures, in different circumstances, in different places. But as a coach, how do you get that without being offered the first job? And that's it's a
Right.
kind of gilt-edged question. So a lot of places will be looking for college players that have gone through, they've got their degree, they've come out, or even just for summer holidays. I was contacted even about an hour ago by somebody from Moldova who's a sophomore at university, but he was looking for a coaching position for the summer. He wasn't aware of the visa situation with college and whether he could work. So yeah, there's lots of sort of scenarios which could change a lot of things.
Do you normally have, I guess, just maybe for the higher positions, like a director position or something like that, do you have the candidate go to that country and like make a visit before offering the job, or is it mostly done online?
It's still done online. However, they will look a lot closer at recommendations, at how they've been at certain clubs, and whether they've been in 20 different clubs in 25 years. I mean, it's a bit of a red flag when you see something like that. You want to look for stability. So in the higher positions, you hope that maybe they've been working 20, 25 years in the industry and maybe had 5, 6 different places where they've at least gone to different countries, had different cultures, but also been committed to working there as well.
I mean, that's got to be tough to manage, because without visiting, you could have certain expectations, and then you go there in person and maybe you're in the job 2-3 months and you're like, oh, this is not what I was expecting. So that's got to be challenging, I can imagine.
Yeah, that's challenging. And as well is that obviously coaches have wives or husbands, and we tend to ask them to not to think about bringing out families in the first 2 or 3 months. Find out whether they like the place, whether it's going to be the right place for them, because to move a family over all the way and then suddenly find it's not the right area, it's not the right place for you, then you have to move them all the way back again, and it just doesn't work. So there is quite often 3-month probation periods, or for example, I have one Australian coach now who's gone to China and he's moved, and he hasn't moved quite yet, but he's in the process of going through the visa. But they realized that the visa process is going to take a long time. So they invited him out there to begin with for a month on a kind of a business visa. And he was able to assess from his own thoughts whether it's the right place for him. And it was a tough decision because it was an amazing place. It was an amazing school in an island, but it was very remote. And for a partner to come as well, there wasn't necessarily a lot of things for her to do while he was working. And of course, they can only give a business visa for one person. One option is to hire them at the school as well, but that doesn't always work out like that. So there's different scenarios and different times, and I think this was a good way of doing it for him, because he was able to go out there and for a month he's able to meet some of the kids, assess the ability, but also assess whether it's going to be right for him and his partner. And they decided to go. So now they're going through the proper visa process, and he can't get an interview now until June. So he's kind of just waiting now to go. But it's a good thing that he did go. So he's made the right decision, and now he has the time to get prepared to sell his house or rent his house out, and just enough time to get ready before he goes off again.
Another thing that I was thinking about was, you mentioned that you want to see someone that has shown stability in their resume, that has kind of been at the same place for a few years. But at the same time, for someone to even look for a position abroad, they have to have kind of a sense or a spirit of adventure and wanting to try new things, see new cultures, see new places. So that's got to be an interesting balance too, right? Because you probably are going to attract people that are willing to travel, that are adventurers and move around maybe more than the usual tennis pro.
Absolutely, Jennifer, you're quite right. It's a big jump. It's a big jump for anyone to do this. And so just by applying, by becoming a member of the platform, just by then applying for a job, it shows commitment in itself. And then the next commitment is you going through the interview and then actually being accepted for the role and then going, yeah, let's go for the visa process. The step 4 or step 5 was it that is actually going over there and just going to a new place that you've never been before. I think that shows, if you're applying in that direction, that shows enough commitment to the cause. But you do get a lot of people applying going, yeah, I'd love to go to Dubai, I'd love to go to Hong Kong, I'd love to go to China. And then when it comes to it, they might have second thoughts or just get a bit scared by it. So
right. Or they get a girlfriend or boyfriend and like, I don't want to go anymore.
All of a sudden the visa process could take 2 or 3 months and your life is completely changed in those 2 or 3 months. So then are you committed? And we have had one or two sort of situations like that where the whole process has gone well, and then all of a sudden they just change their mind. And I guess that happens. I guess that's life, but it's pretty, you've invested a lot of time as an employer, and then all of a sudden you got to go and start from scratch again. But I think the way that we work is that we work very closely with our coaches. We know roughly what they've done, where they've been, and we have an idea. And yes, we allow them to apply for the jobs, but we may also come to them and say, I think this is an interesting opportunity for you. And we'll talk them through it. And hopefully we'll have known them well enough to think that it's a good opportunity for them. And hopefully that things don't change in that time and they go anyway. And hopefully it then works out.
And is the organizational structure similar to what it is like here in the US, meaning you have, the director of rackets or director of tennis, head pro, assistant, maybe some interns? Is that usually the same, I guess, in Europe and Asia?
It's not necessarily the same, I mean, obviously the States has got a massive culture of country clubs and clubs where director is then looking down on the head coach and then the assistant coaches. It's not necessarily like that, and it all depends on the size of the academy or the club that we're looking at. Some just have a head coach and don't even have a director, for example. You kind of it just varies depending on the place and the size. But there's one position we're working on at the moment, which is really interesting because they're working and it's in Hong Kong, and they're working in various different sports, and they're only very new to tennis. So they're trying to assess really whether they need a director of tennis or whether they just need to go with a few coaches to begin with and then grow. And I'm suggesting that they need a director of tennis and then two tennis coaches, but it's all up to them, and they have to be confident with I guess who they end up employing as well is another thing, because it could be just a head coach material. It might not necessarily be a director material. So everything's interesting and everything changes all the time.
And what would you say, if you don't mind sharing, what would you say is the most profitable country to work at for coaches?
Yeah, I have this conversation several times a week. I had one person from the States came up and said, I used to be top 1,000 in the world. I need a job in Dubai where I'm earning $200 an hour. I need 8 hours and I need 5 days a week. And you're kind of then adding that up and going, you're not going to get that. That's just not going to happen. Dubai is a place where where the reputation is that it's very, very well paid. It's not necessarily as well paid as people think. So really, I guess in answer to your question, without doubt, the States is if you're in the States, in certain places in the US, you're paid better than anyone else, 100%.
Yeah.
But outside of that, then you're looking at Hong Kong, Singapore, China, and then potentially you're moving across to sort of Saudi, which there's been a new investment in tennis in there, and possibly Dubai and Kuwait, these sort of places. So if you're looking to coach in tennis and you're looking to earn the most money, Europe isn't the place to be.
Really?
But it's all relative as well, though. It all depends. I mean, these places, Hong Kong, yes, you're probably paid the best out of anywhere, but your living expenses are going to be high as well. So
yeah,
it's all relative to where you are, really.
And do the positions in Hong Kong or in Dubai, do they usually offer? Well, I guess it's a little bit different there, but I was going to ask you if they offer benefits because it's different because here you like have to have health insurance and things like that. Yeah. In other countries, it's not as expensive to like go to the hospital if something happened to you. But do companies usually offer other benefits besides like an hourly rate or a salary?
So the way that most people work, they'll give a salary based on, X amount of hours on court, and then you'll be paid a commission on top of that. And that's how the standard sort of works now.
Yeah.
Because of COVID, companies have started doing no basic salary, just pay as you earn, or pay as you earn as you're on court, if you like. So just paid an hourly rate, and that covers the employer in case of any lockdowns again that might happen due to COVID or anything else. But it really doesn't cover the coach. And another thing that you look at is that in some countries, as a coach, you're pretty much self-employed. Even if you work for a company, you're earning self-employed hours. So a lot of that is therefore, for example, in the UK, a lot of coaching would be all done on your own. Even if you're specifically working for a company, you still do your own taxes, you still do everything like that. And that's why it becomes even harder to get a visa into that particular country, because the government will want to see that you're earning X amount, and the company can't guarantee that you're going to be earning that amount.
Yeah.
So I would say it's a difficult industry to be in general.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine all the different challenges. And I was going to also ask you, what about housing? Do these jobs usually offer housing to the pros?
So we deal with a lot of resorts. Resorts would all cover the housing, they'd cover the food.
Oh, nice.
Anything outside of that, if they cover housing, it's a big asset to have. They might give you a housing allowance, or they might house you for 10, 12 weeks while you get settled and set up. But most probably won't include housing. And you'd have to get your bearings first for a couple of months, and then once you're settled and you're in, then you can find a place to live, which is near to wherever the facility is you are. So yeah. I mean, some of the time they do supply the housing. That'll be more hotels, resorts.
Yeah.
Outside of that, they may give you a hand or may give you a help, certainly for the first few months, and then you might be on your own. So it's another difficulty to look into.
Yeah, for sure. And and this might be a stupid question, I mean, I don't know, do you have to, I'm sure in the US you do, when you travel abroad and you work abroad, you have to pay taxes in that country and then also in your own country?
Yeah, see, that's another one. That's another one that
I didn't know that. I was seriously just thinking about that. I was wondering.
Yeah, it depends on where you're resident. If you're on just a visa, you're not necessarily resident of that country, then probably the taxes are paid where you're from. But then it could be paid by where the employer is. And that's also interesting because you have management companies, and you have management companies that may be based in Europe, but you're in a resort which is in Asia, for example. So where do the taxes go there? Yeah. It's a good question, and I couldn't tell you the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. the more you dig in, it's more like, oh my God, what about this? What about that?
Yeah, there's
Oh,
so
I'm
many
sorry, I
things
don't
to
mean
think
to put you
about.
in the spot, but I'm just thinking like, well, what about that? Because I'm used to, I have, I'm not abroad, but I go away for the summers. I teach in the Northeast in the summer, and then I live in Florida the rest of the year. So
Yeah,
that in itself, it's like a whole different world, its own set of challenges, and some of them are the same, like taxes, right? You have to pay taxes in two different states.
yeah,
They're filed differently, but kind of same concept, housing, all those type of things, right? And I can't imagine, between nations, it's even more complicated. So yeah,
yeah.
that's just all so interesting to me. But do you have any advice for a pro trying to find a position in a different country? Any general advice?
General advice would be do your research. One of the biggest frustrations for me a lot of the time is people, when they apply for a job, they apply and they just click the apply button. Application comes to me. They know nothing about the company and they haven't told the recruiter anything about themselves. So we have the way that we work is that we create a profile for each coach, and that's basically an online CV with photos, videos, testimonials, everything all on one page. Now, if they come, it's not really enough for a recruiter to say, yes, I want to interview that person. So they have to then say, the actual coach has to basically say, what, this is my position. I'm living in the States currently. I'm finishing college in May. I'm then looking for a coaching job from June, and I've looked into your academy. It's a really nice place. Your facility is amazing. I have this and this and this question, or I've done this and this and this. If people don't do that, how, and even if they see the profile that we create, which is extensive, they don't know their situation. They don't know whether they can start tomorrow or start in 3 months' time. And the employer should know all this. They should know this, and they should just assess whether they want to interview them at that time. So I think it's really important to be clear, and it's really important to do your research on the place and tell the recruiter where you are, in what situation you are.
Yeah, I see that from both the employer and the applicant, because how do I say this? Sometimes if you're looking for a job, you might just be applying like crazy and, see what sticks. You're just throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping something sticks, right? And a lot of times when you see a job posting, I'm not saying yours, I'm just talking in general, you don't really know how much it pays, what the expectations are. It depends on the company and how they go about making that information public. But a lot of times a pro might just want to know, how much does that position pay?
Yeah.
And they might not necessarily have an interest until they might have a certain number in their mind. And if it can meet that, then maybe they're interested. But once they find out what it makes, it's like, forget it. So I see that from both sides. I think also employers need to do a better job about being open and transparent with the information about their job. Don't put salary based on experience. Of course it's based on experience. Whether you get the job or not, it's going to be based on experience. Tell me how much it pays. Like, that's what I want to know. I want to know how much it pays. I want to know if you're, like you said, covering my housing. How are you helping me get to you, especially if it's abroad, right? So do you encounter that? How do you advise maybe the clubs that you're working with to make this more transparent, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm a bit on the fence here because I understand it from both angles. I work very closely with the recruiter, but at the same time, I work very closely with a lot of coaches all at the same time. And so I have an idea of what they're on and what they want to be on.
Yeah.
And I have an idea what the recruiter's going to pay and how they're going to do it. And I do leave it open to the recruiter. Some in our forms for jobs, they give you an option to put benefits, and you can obviously put wages in the benefits. I am on the fence with it, because I think that both sides should be transparent. But I do see that one person, for example, I work closely with several academies, and they asked me to send all profiles across. So they might have 4 or 5 openings. One might be director, one might be assistant coach, and they might be applying as one application for any of the positions that they have. Now, each of them are going to be different. You're not going to say, well, you're going to earn between $2,000 a month and 10,000, because that's pointless.
Right.
That's a big gap. So I do see it both ways. And I see the way that resorts work is that part of their benefits is that you get food, you get your accommodation. Some will offer a low basic and high hourly rate. Some won't offer a basic. They'll say every hour that you get paid, you get, or you get on court, you get this amount. So they have to be clear and concise. But I believe that is what you look at in the interview process, because I think that there's so many different roles that you could have as a tennis coach in a particular company. And it's difficult to say you're actually going to be a perfect fit for my director of tennis over actually you should be a head coach for this particular place. So I think both ways. I think that the coach or the applicant should be really clear on what they are looking for. Maybe they should be saying, this is the salary that I'm on, and this is the salary I'd like to earn, or something like this. And then the recruiter can say, well, actually, that's something that we can look at, or that's way too much, or this job is probably, you need to be more experienced for that. So yeah, it's a bit of both ways. And I will ask them to do it whichever way that they feel the most comfortable.
I think what you said, just to highlight it real quick, about having clarity is really important. And I say that because I myself haven't been really clear on what I'm looking for or what I want when I'm looking for a job. And then it kind of puts you it has happened where it kind of puts you in a situation where you're offered a job that maybe once you get to the bottom of it, you're not really that interested in it. And yeah, that is so important. And that is something that as an applicant, you really have to ponder. And just to be fair to yourself and to people that might be spending time interviewing you, is to have that clarity. And then also, of course, as a company, to have that clarity into what it is that you're looking for, what is your vision, what kind of person you want to bring in is super, super, super important.
Yeah.
Because then same thing might happen. You might bring in someone that looks great on paper, but does not really fulfill the needs that you need. So yeah, I think that's what it comes down to, is clarity. Because I think most people are willing to be transparent, but a lot of times I think what's lacking is that clarity. So that was a great point to make. And I just wanted to maybe highlight that a little bit. But what do you think, in your opinion, separates a good pro versus an okay pro?
Okay, so I think communication is the number one key. And the reason that I say this is that what you'll find is most applicants for a particular job, they can hit well, they might be able to coach well as well. But the big thing is, can they answer a text on time? Can they speak to the parents? Can they communicate in a really effective way?
Yeah.
And I get to know this from probably the first 5 minutes when I've met somebody. You have an idea, and so many people, and I get this every week. So I ask people to contact me by WhatsApp because it's more of a test than anything. I would rather people contact me by WhatsApp, but I want to see how professional they are in the first place. And if somebody, which happens 10 times every week, just sends a CV or just sends their resume, and they can't even be bothered to say, hi, my name is Joe Blogs. They just send the resume, and I'm like, this is irrelevant to me. So the communication is so key. And I give them the opportunity to say, look, I'm a middleman effectively, which I am. So you're not selling yourself to me. You'll be selling yourself to a potential employer. So I will always tell them, this is from an employer's perspective. You need to be able to communicate better, otherwise you have no chance. And I did this to somebody. I just sent a message back to him. I said, "Thank you for your CV. It'd be nice to know a little bit about you." And one of my pet hates, and being them honest to them, one of my pet hates is for somebody to just send a resume over, and they wrote back, "Okay."
No.
And that was that. And I was expecting, okay, my name is whatever, I've done this and done that, but they just said okay.
Yeah.
And straight away you're just thinking, well, are you recruitable? Not really.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah, and responsiveness, right? Sometimes people don't get back with you, and days go by, and you're like, okay, what happened? What are your thoughts on the timeliness of the response?
Yeah, it's a frustrating one, and as long as they're clear to me, right, I'm really busy this period, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. That's fair enough. But when as soon as you can, like, who doesn't have time in the evening to text somebody back?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you might forget, so you do it the next morning or something like this, and that does happen. But I do give people the benefit of the doubt as far as I can. But there are some people that are just not worth it. And for example, I mean, as part of my job, I'm a salesperson. I need to get people onto the platform, and the more people I get onto the platform, the better the strength in coaches is, and the different varieties of position that we can fill. But for example, I mean, I've been talking with this one guy. He's a guy from Lebanon. I have no problem with anyone from any country whatsoever. But he messaged me originally, yeah, I love what you're doing. I really want to join the platform. Can you give me 4 days and I'll do that? So you're giving him 4 days. So you give him a bit more than that. You give him a week. You say, so is any news? And he fills me with something and says, it's just coming, but sorry, I haven't been back to you. Give me another 5 days. And then you're going on, and this has gone on 6 times, and now it's just a joke. So you 6 times was too many that I gave him, absolutely too much. But you like to give people the benefit of the doubt. They might not be in a great financial position. You don't know what their situation is. Right. So you have to be slightly generous, but at the same time, there's being generous and there's taking the biscuit, So
I think you're being too generous. To me, it just shows that you're not hungry for it. Like, you must not want it that much. And unless it's someone that you're like dying to get yourself, maybe give them a little extra time. I mean, that's what I would do. If it's someone that you really want, maybe you give them a little extra time. But even then, like, it just kind of tells you that they're not that crazy about the position, right? If they're not getting back with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's nothing I hate more than people that blatantly see the message as soon as, on WhatsApp, see the message as soon as they can, and maybe they can't get back to you then. And then they take 3 days to get back to you, and you're like,
Especially on WhatsApp, because you can see when they're active. You can see that they've seen the message. It says read.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no line about it. I mean,
yeah. So there's just ways of communication. And you can talk about communication for hours, but at the end of the day, on court, that's so important as well.
Yeah.
And being able to communicate in an effective way with your player, with the kid, so important. And if they can't do that to you, the potential recruiter, what hope have you got, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've talked about, all these different challenges. We've covered a lot of different challenges with these international positions. But what about cultural challenges, like cultural differences? Because even what we're talking about, responsiveness, maybe in a different culture, maybe that is more acceptable than, like, in American culture is very much right here, right now. If you don't get back with me, I'm done with you. But maybe in another country, that's not necessarily the case. So have you seen, or do you have any stories that you can share about those maybe more culturally based differences?
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting one as well. And a culture is very different from one place to the next.
Yeah.
And I've been there and I've visited various different places, and I can see fully the differences straight away as soon as you get off the plane, you know. But yeah, it's interesting. But at the same time, I mean, we're talking about communication, and I don't see that there's this big saying, isn't there, in Arabic, I believe, inshallah, which is basically later. And that can be described in many different ways. It can be later as in next year, it can be in 6 months time, it can be tomorrow. So
There you go.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, it's just how it's construed. And that's why doing what I do, I have to be a little bit, I have to give them a little bit of extra, even though I don't necessarily want to. And even if I find them rude, you have to give them an opportunity to redeem themselves or to explain their situation.
Right.
And maybe their situation all of a sudden is terrible. I mean, I, this isn't a bad situation I had, but I had a woman from Spain. She actually lives in Miami. We had a great conversation, really effective. She wants to sign up for a particular move back to Europe. She said, "Yeah, I'm going to have a look at it and get sort of on the platform in the next 48 hours." She didn't do that, so I said, "Sorry," and then she came back straight away. She's very, very nice. Came back saying, "Sorry, I had a really busy weekend. I'm looking at that over the next 48 hours." And I said, "Okay, absolutely fine." And then about 72 hours later, she got back to me, which I find acceptable. And she said, "Sorry, I had a bit of an emergency, something I didn't expect, a dentist requirement." And she says that she will do it as soon as she possibly has the money. I think it's more about a money situation. And when that's the case, that's absolutely fine. You know, you can understand that. But there's people that then just completely ignore you and get back to you when they want. And it could be, you could have sent them a message, "Hi, how's it going?" Just being really polite. And then they say, "Oh, fine," a month later. You're like, "So sorry, who are you again?" But yeah, it's funny. It's just how different people are. But I think that the whole culture, the whole cultural side of things now is that people are so busy, people don't have time on their hands, and they just take longer to get back to you.
Yeah,
Whether that's
that's
just me or
what's that?
whether that's just me or whether that's in general, I don't know. But no, that seems to be what happens.
Yeah, I think that happens to most people. I think maybe that's an international issue.
Younger generation maybe as well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's funny that you mentioned Spain, and not to make a generalization about all people from Spain, but something that is kind of interesting about that country in particular is that I went there to coach years ago, and one of the main things that I noticed is that siesta time, right? Like between 1 and like 4 p.m., everything shuts down. People don't work, and it's a very different culture. They're very social. There's a lot of different things. And I've seen it even with people from Spain that come to the US. And in general, I think maybe if they've done college here, they're a little bit more used to the American grind and the American way. But that can be a bit of a culture shock to maybe work in Spain and then come to the US. And now you have to work so many hours in a day, especially if you're at a busy club. You can be 10 hours on the court. So I've seen some people from Spain in particular, not to call them out, like struggle with that in particular. So there's got to be so many little intricacies. Like I wonder, like if I was to go to China, I've never been to China. What's one of the main things that I would see that I'm like, wow, this is totally different here? Does anything come to mind?
Does actually, and it's the way that parents talk to their own kids, and it's quite bizarre. But they very much respect for example, looking at tennis coaching, they very, very much respect anything that a foreign coach would say, but then they would completely disagree with something that a Chinese coach says. So, and then it's how the kids react to that, and it's very, very funny. But I've never been to China. I'd love to go. I stayed about 2 nights in Hong Kong. It happened to be Christmas Day one year, and I was on my own, and I had such a great time in Hong Kong. Met loads of people, and Hong Kong, it just seemed that everybody was just so friendly, and that's. But whether that was being friendly to me as a Westerner, as quite a foreigner, and whether they're exactly the same to their own culture, I'm not sure as well.
Yeah.
So no, it's just every country is different, and you just got to respect how they are.
Of course, it's just important to kind of keep that in mind. That it doesn't mean, like, even with the example I gave, it doesn't mean that this person is lazy. They just grew up totally different from you, and now they're an adult and they've never seen this. This is something completely new and different to them, the culture and how people work, the work culture, all those things. So I just find that really interesting, because I'm myself from another country and I came here for college and I've stayed here. But even from my own country, there's so many differences, and we could talk about that all day, but I don't want to get into too crazy of a rant about this. I do want to kind of wrap this up a little bit, because I know we've been talking for a while and I told you it would be an hour, and I want to definitely respect your time. But before I let you go, if you don't mind sharing with us what has been the Grand Slam moment and the double bagel moment of your tennis life. So like the highest and the low. It can be as a player, as a recruiter, as a coach, whatever you want to share with us.
Yeah, I guess the highlight really has been, to be honest with you, this week. This week, I told you before, it celebrated the 5-year anniversary, and it's so amazing the amount of really positive feedback and the positive news and the positive comments that people have been making. It really does make a difference to me. So I want to thank everyone, all my customers, all my clients, and everyone that's been part of what we've done. It's been really fantastic. Thank you so much. And I guess negative moment, and I'll keep it to the platform and what we've done. Unfortunately, we came across a coach who says one thing and does a very different thing, and he changed his name to get out of a lot of fraudulent situations. He actually caused the person that his employer to have a breakdown. So I was absolutely devastated by that. That was a really low moment. 2 years later, he was then in touch with me again, and these are the people we don't treat with. We treat very harshly. We'll kick them off the platform. We don't want to know. He came back to me 2 years later and he really apologized, and that's great, but it doesn't mean we can't forget what has happened in the past. And so that would be one of my negative moments about what I guess the last 5-7 years that we've been working on this.
Yeah, that sounds pretty rough. Thank you for sharing that. Any way that people can get in contact with you, maybe tell us your website. How can somebody reach out to you if they're interested in learning more, or they want to maybe apply to a position abroad?
Yeah, of course. The first correspondence, I'll always ask people to send me a WhatsApp. My number is +353 86 792 2188. I'm on email, info@sportsprosconnect.com. I have Instagram at SportsProsConnect. I have Facebook. I have LinkedIn. I seem to spend all my time on social media doing what I do. So you can contact me any social media, by WhatsApp, on the website sportsprosconnect.com. Yeah, it's not difficult to find me.
And you had mentioned that you're doing some rebranding and maybe there's something new coming up. Do you want to share anything about that, or you want to kind of let people find that on their own?
No, I can share. So we've been SportsProsConnect for the last 5 years. We moved and we converted to a tennis coaching jobs platform as part of what we did in November 2019. We've been successful enough to have placed well over 350 coaches with jobs. And now we're in the process of creating a new platform which will be even better, which will involve a headhunting membership where we can headhunt for a particular role that you're looking for. We can also provide them with their own video resume. We've just partnered with a video production company in the UK who will be doing these as part of the new platform. So it's really, really exciting time. We're sort of doing the pre-selling of the new platform, which should be ready in around about July time. And yeah, we're really excited to launch the next phase. I guess here's to the next 5 years afterwards. But it's a really good time and a really exciting time for us.
That's fantastic. Congratulations on all the success and best of luck with all the new stuff coming up. Mark, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure talking with you today.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to Vita Tennis. If you want to learn more about Mark and SportsProsConnect, you should check out his website. There are so many coaching positions on there, and like we discussed, they are all over the world, which is super exciting, especially if you're a younger pro. As usual, you can find all the links in the show notes. If you're enjoying the podcast so far, please share it with someone who you think will enjoy it or get something from it. It means more than you know. I am also going to ask you to please rate and review the show so other like-minded listeners can find this content. Thanks for listening, and until next time.